The legend of Goliath, the giant of Gath. Have you heard of Goliath, the feared giant who terrorized entire kingdoms? Imagine a warrior descended from the Nephilim, nearly 3 meters tall, wearing a bronze armor weighing 60 kilos and wielding a spear as large as a tree trunk. He seemed invincible, but what happened when a young shepherd challenged this colossus? Stay with us and discover how courage and faith can overcome even the greatest giants in history. Goliath was not just an ordinary soldier. He was a living legend. Descended from the Nephilim, an ancient race of giants, Goliath inherited a supernatural strength that made him almost invincible. Standing nearly 3 meters tall and wearing a bronze armor weighing 60 kilos, he appeared as a walking mountain. His spear, the size of a tree trunk, and his gigantic shield made him a moving fortress on the battlefield. Hailing from Gath, one of the main Philistine cities, Goliath stood out from a young age, winning battles and inspiring terror. No enemy had managed to defeat him. To the Philistines, he was a symbol of power, and to the Israelites, the greatest nightmare. His fame was so great that his presence caused panic, and no army dared to challenge him. But at a decisive moment, David, a young shepherd, emerged as the unexpected challenger. Armed only with a sling and a stone, David faced Goliath and, with a precise strike, brought down the giant. David's victory was not only a defeat for Goliath but also proof that faith and courage can overcome even the greatest giants. Goliath was not just an ordinary soldier. He was a true force of nature, a living legend in his time. From a young age, Goliath had already stood out among the warriors of his people. However, his origin was what intrigued and terrified those who heard his name the most. He was descended from the Nephilim, a race of giants mentioned in the scriptures, powerful and imposing beings who had long terrified the hearts of men. These giants, who lived before and after the flood, were known for their supernatural strength, and Goliath was one of the last remnants of this lineage. This explained his unusual stature and abilities, making him a formidable opponent. Originating from Gath, one of the 5 main Philistine cities, Goliath stood out early on as an unbeatable warrior. Gath was a prosperous and fortified city with a powerful army, but even among the best soldiers, Goliath was unmatched. He was not just taller than everyone else, he seemed invulnerable. His fame grew as he won battles, and his name soon spread across all surrounding lands. There was not a single army that did not tremble upon hearing about the giant of Gath. Standing nearly 3 meters tall, Goliath looked more like a walking mountain than a man. When he entered the field, his long legs and muscular arms intimidated even the bravest warriors. He wore a bronze armor weighing about 60 kilos, a weight that any other man could barely bear, but for Goliath it seemed like just a second skin. The gleam of this armor under the sun made him look like a living bronze statue, gleaming menacingly as he walked. Each piece of his armor was custom-made for his gigantic body, and each part had a purpose: to protect the invincible warrior within. Goliath also carried a gigantic spear, which looked more like the trunk of a tree than a common weapon. The tip of his spear was made of iron and weighed as much as a millstone. Just the act of lifting it demonstrated the extraordinary strength he possessed. Additionally, Goliath had a shield so large that it required a squire to carry it in front of him, covering him almost completely. This combination of armor, spear, and shield transformed Goliath into a true moving fortress. What made Goliath even more feared was his reputation for invincibility. He had never lost a battle. Every enemy who dared to approach him was brought down with a single blow. His sword, as large as a two-handed weapon for ordinary warriors, cut through his adversaries as if they were mere branches. His own people, the Philistines, treated him as a hero. Goliath was not just a soldier to them. He was the symbol of Philistine power, a warrior capable of crushing any opposition and ensuring victories in battles. Wherever Goliath went, his enemies felt fear invade their hearts. It was not just the sight of his immense figure that caused terror, but the way he walked, confident, knowing that no one would dare challenge him. His presence on the battlefield made the bravest warriors hesitate, doubting their own abilities in the face of such strength. To the Philistines, Goliath was the guarantee that they would always have the advantage in any confrontation. They believed that, as long as Goliath was standing, no enemy could prevail against them. To the Israelites, Goliath was not just an opponent, he was the personification of the impossible. His size, strength, and reputation for never having been defeated made him the greatest challenge any warrior could face. He represented everything that was insurmountable in the eyes of men. His arrogant confidence and constant provocations humiliated the Israelite armies, causing even the most experienced soldiers to shrink in fear. Every movement of Goliath, every word he spoke, shook the foundations of the battlefields. He was more than a man, he was a giant, a colossus who dominated wars with the mere presence of his shadow. His fame was as great as he was, and no one dared to believe that anyone could bring him down. This was the aura surrounding Goliath, the giant of Gath, descendant of the Nephilim, a warrior whose strength and size made him seem invincible, and who used every aspect of his colossal presence to intimidate and destroy his enemies. He was a true symbol of Philistine power, a living wall against any army that dared to oppose him. And so, Goliath awaited his next challenger, certain that no one would be able to face him, or at least that's what he thought. The story of Goliath takes place at one of the tensest moments in Israel's history, during a period of endless conflicts with the Philistines, a powerful and warrior nation that constantly threatened the security and peace of Israel. The battles between these two peoples were frequent, but this time the tension had reached a new level. Both armies were encamped on opposite sides of a great valley, the Valley of Elah, ready for battle. On one side, the Israelites, led by King Saul, were restless and nervous, while on the other, the Philistines, confident and provocative, awaited their opportunity to attack. But the Philistines had a different idea to resolve the conflict. Instead of both armies engaging in a bloody battle, they proposed something that, to them, seemed to be a simple and effective solution: a battle between champions. The idea was simple but bold. A single man from each side would fight on behalf of the entire army. Whoever won would ensure victory for their people, saving the lives of hundreds of soldiers. For the Philistines, this was a favorable proposal because they had a true war machine in their ranks: Goliath. Goliath was not an ordinary warrior. As a descendant of the Nephilim, he was much more than an ordinary soldier. He was a war machine, nearly 3 meters tall, with a colossal armor and a presence that seemed to consume all the hope of the Israelites. When Goliath advanced to the front line, all eyes turned to him. His gigantic body gleamed under the sun, covered in bronze, and each step he took seemed to make the ground tremble. He was the pride of the Philistines, and they knew that, with Goliath at the forefront, there would be hardly any adversary of equal measure. For 40 consecutive days, Goliath would leave the Philistine camp and descend into the valley, where he would challenge the army of Israel. His voice was like thunder, echoing through the hills and reverberating among the Israelite soldiers. "Who among you is brave enough to face me?" he would shout. His words were filled with contempt and mockery. He was not only challenging the army of Israel, he was insulting their courage, their faith, and even their God. Day after day, the Philistine giant performed the same ritual. He would descend into the valley, raise his voice, and provoke the Israelites. His challenge was clear: "If there is any man among you brave enough, come and face me. If he wins, we, the Philistines, will be your servants. But if I win, you will be our slaves." His words were as sharp as his weapons, and he knew exactly how to use them to wound the pride of the Israelites. But despite all his bravado, no one in the army of Israel dared to approach. Every time Goliath shouted his challenge, the Israelite soldiers remained motionless, terrified, looking at each other, hoping that someone would have the courage they did not. Goliath did not only mock the Israeli warriors, he challenged the honor of all the people of Israel. He ridiculed their God, saying that there was no one in Israel capable of facing a warrior like him. His voice echoed every day, and each time he made his challenge, the confidence of the Israelites weakened even further. The soldiers trembled with fear, unable to find within themselves the courage to face the giant. King Saul, who should have been the bravest of all, was also frightened. He, who had been anointed to lead Israel, was directionless in the face of Goliath. None of his soldiers wanted to volunteer to face the giant, and he did not have the strength to force anyone to do so. With each passing day, the morale of the army of Israel fell. Goliath's provocations had achieved exactly what he desired, planting fear in the hearts of the Israelites, paralyzing them even before the battle began. For 40 days, the valley of Elah witnessed this impasse. On one side, the Philistines, confident and arrogant, believed that Goliath would secure their victory. On the other, the Israelites, tormented by fear, wondered how they could defeat such a formidable enemy. The tension increased with each new challenge, and it seemed that the conflict was at a standstill with no solution. And so, Goliath's challenge continued to echo through the valley. The Israelites, desperate, wondered if any hero would arise to face the giant. Each new day, Goliath's thunderous voice resounded, mocking them, humiliating them, while the army of Israel remained paralyzed, unable to react. The story seemed to be at a hopeless point, until something unexpected began to unfold. While the army of Israel trembled in fear before Goliath, an unexpected figure appeared from a distance. He was not a seasoned warrior, nor someone trained for battle. It was David, a young shepherd, who at that moment had no idea that his life was about to change forever. He had not come to the battlefield with the intention of fighting. In fact, his father, Jesse, had sent him with a simple task: to bring food to his older brothers, who were among the soldiers of Israel, and to bring news about how they were doing. David was the youngest in his family, and his older brothers saw him as an insignificant boy. While they were on the battlefield, he continued his simple life as a shepherd, tending his father's sheep on the hills of Bethlehem. But David had always known that there was something deeper in his life. Even while tending the sheep, he harbored an unwavering faith in God. He had faced dangers before, defending his flock from lions and bears, but he knew that true strength did not come from his own might, but from God's protection. Upon arriving at the Israelite camp, David delivered the provisions to his brothers and began to sense the atmosphere of fear that hung over the Israelite army. He saw the faces of the soldiers, faces that should have been filled with courage but were now dominated by dread. The cause of this fear soon became apparent. As David was there, Goliath, the Philistine giant, once again descended into the valley and made his daily challenge. His voice echoed across the field, laden with arrogance and disdain. "Who dares to fight me?" David, who had come simply to see his brothers, was paralyzed, but not by fear. He was indignant. The audacity of Goliath did not impress him. On the contrary, his words filled him with righteous anger. To David, it was not just a giant challenging the army of Israel. Goliath was mocking God, and that was something David could not bear. He looked around, hoping that some soldier would rise up to defend the honor of Israel and of God. But what he saw was silence. No one dared to move a muscle. Fear had paralyzed them all. With courage and determination, David approached his brothers and asked, "Why is no one fighting this giant? Who is this uncircumcised Philistine that he should defy the armies of the living God?" David's words echoed with a confidence that seemed out of place for someone so young. His brothers, however, did not react well. Eliab, the eldest, was angry and tried to silence him. "Why have you come here? You just want to see the battle. Go back to tending the sheep." But David was not intimidated. He knew there was a greater cause at stake. As David spoke with other soldiers, news of his boldness quickly reached King Saul. The king, desperate for a solution, called David to him. When David entered Saul's tent, the scene was curious. There was a young shepherd without armor, without a sword, but with a determination in his eyes that set him apart from any soldier. David looked at Saul and, with the confidence that only someone with unwavering faith could have, said, "Don't worry about this Philistine. I will fight him." Saul was astonished. How could a youth with no battle experience think of facing a trained giant like Goliath? Saul tried to dissuade David, explaining that he was just a boy and that Goliath had been a warrior since his youth. But David was undeterred. He told the king about his experiences as a shepherd, how he had already faced lions and bears while protecting his sheep. "The Lord who delivered me from the paw of the lion and the bear will deliver me from the hand of this Philistine," David said with conviction. Before David's unwavering faith, Saul relented. He offered his own armor to the young man, but when David tried to wear it, he realized it was not what he needed. Saul's armor was heavy and cumbersome for him, and David knew that true strength was not in metal or human weapons, but in God. So he removed the armor, took his sling, and calmly went to a nearby stream, where he chose 5 smooth stones. That was all he needed. As the Israelite soldiers watched in disbelief, David, armed only with his sling and stones, began to descend towards the valley where Goliath awaited him. The giant, seeing him approach, laughed in disdain. "Do you come at me with sticks? I'm a dog," Goliath mocked. For the giant it seemed like a joke. A simple shepherd boy dared to face him? But David, with impressive firmness, replied, "You come to me with sword, spear, and shield, but I come to you in the name of the Lord of hosts, the God of the armies of Israel, whom you have defied." The battle would not be decided by human strength, but by the power of God. David knew that. He swung his sling with precision and, at the exact moment, hurled the stone with all his strength and faith. The stone flew through the air and struck Goliath on the forehead, with such force that the giant fell to the ground, dead. The impossible had happened. Goliath, the invincible giant, was down, and the Israelite army, which had been paralyzed with fear, now shouted with joy and victory. David's defeat of Goliath was not just a military triumph, but a triumph of faith over fear. David, with his courage and trust in God, showed that even the greatest challenges can be overcome when one believes in something greater than one's own strength. What started as a simple mission to bring food to his brothers turned into one of the greatest victories in Israel's history. David not only defeated the giant but also became a symbol of courage and faith for all the Israelites. From that moment on, his life changed forever, and he became a national hero, remembered for his bravery and deep trust in God. In the next chapter, the story of David unfolds with even greater depth and complexity. Having achieved a stunning victory over Goliath, David is thrust into the spotlight as a national hero. His triumph has not only elevated his status but also set the stage for a series of unforeseen challenges and trials that will test his character and resolve in ways he could never have imagined. As David returns to the royal court, the once humble shepherd finds himself amidst the grandeur and intrigue of palace life. The adulation from the people of Israel and the praise heaped upon him bring a whirlwind of change. However, the very fame and acclaim that should have been a source of joy also bring with them new and daunting responsibilities. David must now navigate the treacherous waters of royal politics and diplomacy, where every move is scrutinized and every action has far-reaching consequences. King Saul, who once saw David as a promising ally and protector, begins to view him with increasing suspicion and jealousy. The king's insecurities grow as David's popularity soars, creating a volatile atmosphere in the court. Saul's paranoia and envy lead to a series of hostile actions and schemes designed to undermine David's position. The palace becomes a battleground of power plays, deceit, and shifting allegiances, as Saul's distrust threatens to unravel the stability of the kingdom. In this volatile environment, David faces a series of personal and political challenges. His loyalty to Saul and his commitment to his own moral and ethical values are put to the ultimate test. The young hero must balance his newfound role as a leader with his own sense of right and wrong, all while dealing with the constant threat of betrayal and intrigue. The pressures of leadership weigh heavily on him, as he grapples with the demands of his position and the complexities of court politics. Despite the turmoil, David's faith and determination remain his guiding lights. His unwavering trust in divine guidance helps him navigate the stormy seas of political intrigue and personal strife. As he contends with the challenges and dangers that come with his elevated status, David continues to rely on his deep-rooted faith and inner strength to guide his actions and decisions. Prepare yourself for a chapter that is rich with drama, suspense, and unexpected twists. David's journey is far from over, and the coming events will further test his resilience and leadership. The stakes are higher than ever as he faces the dual challenges of external threats and internal conflicts. How will David confront the dangers that lie ahead? Will he be able to maintain his integrity and honor in the face of growing opposition and treachery? We invite you to be an active part of this unfolding saga. Share your thoughts, predictions, and theories about what might happen next in the comments below. What do you think David will face in the upcoming chapters? How do you anticipate his journey will evolve as he navigates the complexities of his new role? Your insights and discussions are invaluable, and we eagerly look forward to hearing your perspectives. Join us as we dive deeper into David's remarkable story and witness the challenges and triumphs that lie ahead. Your engagement enriches the experience for everyone, and we are excited to explore the next chapter with you. Stay tuned for more updates and dramatic developments as David's journey continues to unfold.